We had this discussion that every person has a writer in them.
Yeah.
It's just a question of whether they choose to write it or not. I feel like every person also has a reader in them. They've probably not discovered what necessarily is their space.
Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us with the girls who overthink.
With Girls Who Think, the podcast.
Welcome back, listeners, to yet another episode of Girls Who Think, the podcast. And today, our topic is something that our listeners are really going to resonate with, and that is how to read more. Because I know that most of us who follow us here are readers, writers, creatives, and people who generally like to think, read, and talk a lot. So I'm going to open the stage for Niharika here, who I am pretty sure is probably a better reader than me.
Controversial opinion.
So Niharika, tell us how to read more.
Well, but I would like to preface this conversation with saying that, I feel like I started getting asked this question a lot more once I had my book out there, because people assume that as a writer, you would be reading a lot. And we both have had a discussion about this. I think of both of them as extremely independent aspects to you as an individual. Very different interests, both come from different places. Of course, reading more is always going to give you more perspective on a lot of different things, but your writing is going to come only from your experiences. So I feel like maybe reading more is going to probably add a lot of nuance to your craft, but it's not that all writers are phenomenal readers by any stretch of the imagination. Having said that, I have always really enjoyed reading, but I do find the conversation around the quantity of books rather futile. I feel like I know a lot of people who've been doing the Goodreads challenges. I do it. I enjoy doing it myself. Every year, I'll kind of put a goal for myself on Goodreads, and it helps me kind of read more for sure. But I don't feel like that makes you more well read necessarily, because I've also seen people kind of just flip through books a lot, and they'll probably have an insane number of books to their name, but they're not necessarily going to come across as very intellectual or very, very well exposed or all of that. I feel like that is a combination of a lot of things. So often people want to read more to have that brand value that, oh, I'm such a reader and I'm such an intellectual, and they kind of use that as like, it's just pseudo intellectualism. So, which is where I feel like that argument completely fails. But having said that, if one is just just enjoys reading and wants to kind of pursue reading more than they do normally, I feel like I have a few hacks up my sleeve. I use all of these new digital mediums also to read, right? So there was a time where I kind of never could imagine moving out of like a paperback, and now I can't live without my Kindle. Like it's an issue. I mean, I have that Kindle with me and I carry it everywhere. But then I also had these amazing, beautiful books that I would pick up from all of my travels and from the Jaipur Literary Festival, which I love to go to. There are all these books which are lying in my shelf, and I don't read it because if it's not on Kindle, I find it really tough to read now.
Really?
Yeah, it's like an issue.
What?
It's a thing.
Very new. I mean, I have something to add here. I feel that's moving from just a reader to a person who wants to consume a lot of information and wants to just do a lot of things on the go, because I think that's what a Kindle does. And I think a lot of us are getting more used to reading or consuming information off of devices than paper. From a cultural and societal standpoint. And I think when you really grow up is when you find comfort in just being on the screen only instead of paperback.
I'm sure that's got to play a part, but also it's like I miss the idea of holding a book in my hand and smelling the pages. I know that that's this romanticized idea, and of course every reader has that in them. But I don't know, I think since I switched to Kindle, firstly it's the instant gratification that if I'm wherever in the world I am, a book is just a click away. I don't have to wait till I go to the bookstore and get the book. That has its own joy, but who has the patience for that anymore, So I love having everything at the tip of my fingers. Secondly, I also really enjoy that it has this, this is the amount of time left for this book. So I feel like that makes me read a lot faster because I know that this chapter is ending in precisely 2 minutes of my reading time. This book is ending in precisely like 4 hours of my reading time. And it's a psychological thing, I guess.
I
But
think it's very modern day digital world person to
yeah,
say, because you are trying to have as many choices and control your time, and kind of the
yeah,
joy of just giving yourself
yeah,
into something
yeah,
goes away. I think so. But I completely understand this feeling. I completely understand where you're coming from, because even I am someone who feels that way. Just having a device such as Kindle makes you feel like the world is your oyster. You can read
yeah,
whatever in the world. You're not confined to one book and that one story,
yeah,
right? And just knowing that you have more control over your time, or how you're spending time on a particular book or a
yeah,
particular subject, is just gives you that feeling of control. So I think it's
yeah,
actually a result of the kind of world we're living
yeah,
in,
for
which
sure.
makes us want to have choices and exert as much control as possible.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's my take on it, I
No, but
think.
it's also that, right? Like the multiplicity of books that you can have. I mean, like in the day, if I'm at work and if I have 15 spare minutes, I would want to read like nonfiction, which aligns with my working life. But at night, I do not want to read nonfiction. I want to read fiction, which is soft and soothing. Maybe a thriller, like I'm a bit crazy, but I'll sleep to a thriller.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I'll have nightmares for sure. But like, I would love to do that. But it's just that, I kind of have all of these different books for me lined up on my Kindle for my day. So I don't necessarily, it's very convenient for sure. Another thing is that I love reading at night the most. And at night, I
Most
mean, just
readers.
most readers, right? And that element of having the lights on, and then me not being able to fall asleep, and then me not being able to sit up straight on the cushion to hold a paperback, otherwise it falls on my face. The Kindle solves all of those issues because it has its inbuilt light, which is I can also fall asleep to it. So it's not like disrupting my sleep while also allowing me to read as comfortably as I can. Like it'll fit in the palm of my hand, and I'll get to kind of read whatever I'm reading. It'll have its inbuilt light. I'll sleep to it. Like it's perfect for me. So
Wow.
Kindle is definitely one way. And
This
also,
sounds like a love story between you and
I
Kindle for some
know,
reason. It
but it
looks like
is.
you're describing your boyfriend. I didn't expect
Yeah.
that reaction.
Well,
Well, now
we
I should.
yeah, but it's like the most joyous part of my day for sure. And over a period of time, I've just gotten way too used to it, and now I kind of find it hard to not be on it. And the other thing is, I travel a lot for work, and I travel a lot in general, and I feel like under normal circumstances I would have a disruption in reading, but having Kindle with me just helps me always have my books at hand. So even if I've forgotten my device, right, even if I've forgotten Kindle at home, I still have Kindle app synced onto my phone, so it'll just be like an easy read if I'm traveling, or if I'm in the cab, or if I'm like whatever, so I can always do that. So that way it kind of avoids the disruptions in reading that I generally have. So that's one way that I do it. But how about you?
Before sharing tips on how to read more, I think I always come back to why. I think anything that you do in life, you first need to figure out your why, right? This is Simon Sinek's theory. It's all over the internet, but I think it's really helped me figure out what I want to do, why I want to do it, and what's the merit in doing it. And I would love to touch upon some of the things that you said about pseudo intellectualism and stuff like that. I think for a lot of people, it's also become like a cultural trend to be well read, because you want to appear a certain way. It's also about the brand value and
Social currency.
it's social currency and
Yeah.
appearances,
Yeah.
which is why figuring out your why is really important. So, as a writer and as a reader, my why behind reading are it's multifold. First is of course the joy of escape, right? You want to escape into a story, you want to escape into fiction,
Yeah.
which is why all of us love
Yeah.
fiction. After your whole day, when you've dealt with the world, you want to come home and just put your feet up,
Yeah.
bury yourself in a book,
Yeah.
and forget about the world. That's escape and joy. That's reason number one. Reason number two, of course, is to be well read, have better vocabulary, and stuff like that, which is for a lot of people. Reason number three, because I'm a writer, is also skill for
Yeah.
me, right? When I read more, I'm obviously able to write better as well. So for me, reading, I think, is not just that, but it's also slightly more from a professional lens. So I think finding your why is very important. And here I also want to talk about fiction and non-fiction. For example, um, if you're someone who's reading more for consumption of knowledge, you'd be consuming more non-fiction than fiction. Now, if you're consuming more non-fiction, you can also definitely listen to audiobooks. I am a big fan of like 10 minutes summary of books, non-fiction books specifically, because again, fiction you're reading to enjoy, it's more pleasure and to appreciate the written word, of course. But non-fiction is mainly from a knowledge consumption point of view, which is why I love the 10-minute summaries, because it's like quick points of what you really need to know. But I'm sure I've had arguments from people who are non-fiction readers saying to me that, hello, that's not how it works. You can't just have a 10-minute summary of a non-fiction book and think that you've learned all there was to learn from there. And ultimately, even if you know the main learnings, I think the whole point of reading is for it to sink in inside of you. That's why we read, right? So that the whole thing kind of envelopes around us, and whatever it is that needs to be taken away from a piece of literature or a piece of information has really sunk into us, and we've absorbed that knowledge, information, idea
Yeah.
properly. So, yeah, but I think in general, if I were to talk about the tips, I think number one is to first know your why and read the stuff that you really need to read, whether it's for pleasure, whether it's for knowledge.
Yeah.
And then I think it's very important to not have so much guilt also. We are in a world where there's constant distraction, there's OTT platforms, there's just so much going on. I think earlier it was much easier to read more because there was no social media, there was no Instagram and WhatsApp fighting for our attention.
Yeah.
Now it's obviously become much harder. So just don't judge yourself so much if you're not
Yeah,
able
yeah,
to read as much. I
yeah.
think it's fine.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I think just try and see how you can integrate it into your daily life. I think that's really helped me. For example, there was a phase where I was really into nonfiction, and how I used to consume nonfiction books was through audiobooks or YouTube audio summaries of it, and that I used to kind of listen to when I would go on my runs or when I was doing my workout and my Pilates and stuff like that. And I think that was a very beautiful ritual for me when I'm doing something for my body and my mind
Together.
together.
Makes you feel so powerful.
It makes you feel so powerful, right? That you're
Yeah.
enriching your body and your mind all at the same time. So
Yeah.
you come out of that 1 hour feeling really enriched and nourished.
Yeah.
So that was one way. So if you have a lot of commute in your life, you're traveling from work or back home, and you have like an hour, 2 hours at your hand, that's a great way to use
Yeah.
your commute time and, consume whatever it is that you want to consume. So yeah, I mean, two, three things. Find your why, find out your what. What is it that you want to read?
Yeah.
And do not let societal
Pressure kind
things,
of dictate
yeah,
it, right?
reading communities and social circles dictate what it is that you want to read when you want to read something else. Right? I want to read a fantasy, spicy fairy tale novel. That's my choice. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't come tell me to just read Shoe Dog and How to Be a Millionaire or
Yeah.
like how to sell,
Absolutely.
I don't know, something in
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
and how to buy an island on something. Like, I don't want to read that stuff, right? I want to read my spicy novels, I will.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely corroborate that because I feel like every person, like, we had this discussion that every person has a writer in them.
Yeah.
It's just a question of whether they choose to write it or not. I feel like every person also has a reader in them. They've probably not discovered what necessarily
Yeah.
is their space. Because I feel like often people are forcing themselves to read something that they think they should for either self growth or for their business or for whatever reason have you. But what they probably under playing is the element of how much are you enjoying reading. That enjoyment of reading is such an important element because people who enjoy reading will always outread people who are reading for work or who are reading for out of any kind of necessity, right? Like I feel like because for me when I'm reading it's really not work at all, it's actually play. And I mean like it comes very easy to me because of that, because I'm picking up this kind of stuff that I'm really truly enjoying reading, and the kind of stuff that, as I said, I would fall asleep to and whatever. And the second thing is definitely, as you rightly said, figuring out the pockets in your day where you can actually integrate reading. You integrate reading with your workouts, for example, which I have tried to do in the morning when I do manage to work out in the morning. I'll kind of have like an audiobook going on my phone. Then I will usually listen to an audiobook also when I'm driving to work. Then I'll be at work and I'll probably have like a non-fiction paperback which I will probably read at work. So I kind of try to get like at least about a half an hour reading time in during my day when so during my day, during my work week, I have like one non-fiction book that I'm pursuing, and I mean like I kind of read that book. And non-fiction is not easy to read, right? Like non-fiction is not, you don't read it cover to cover. Like you kind of take it chapter by chapter because you're absorbing. Every chapter might
Yeah.
actually address a very different
Yeah.
aspect of the topic. So that is how I go with that. And but there was a phase where I think I was also relying a little bit more on these apps that you mentioned that give you summaries of nonfiction books, because I realize I don't necessarily enjoy reading nonfiction, but I
Yeah.
want to. I want to know more about this. So it's not like I'm marking it on my Goodreads list that, oh, I finished reading this book for other people to know. But it's just that I want to know what the author thinks about the subject, but I don't want to sit through 300 pages of it. So I would rely on apps like Blinkist.
Blinkist. I love
Blinkist
that
was
app.
one, that I used to use a
Yeah.
lot back in the day, but not anymore. But what are the other, are there any other summary apps that you use at the moment?
I mostly go for YouTube stuff. I think
Okay.
there's bunch of summaries and bunch of things, 10-minute book summaries and stuff like that
Ooh,
on
I've
YouTube.
never used YouTube for
YouTube is
stuff
like my
like that.
Google. Like I just go to YouTube for everything, and
Yeah.
surprisingly, YouTube has much more niched out, relevant stuff than Google, because I think Google again is just content writers writing long articles. YouTube has become like really sharp.
I've never used YouTube for this, but I'm going to definitely try it
Yeah.
out. But with Audible, I think the issue is that people find they fall asleep when they're listening to Audible, or they zone out. It's very easy to zone out, right? So I figured out a hack to kind of crack that, and it is to basically keep the speed at something where you understand what is being said, but you're slightly uncomfortable. So that kind of keeps you attentive,
Yeah.
because you're constantly trying to catch, your mind is constantly trying to catch what is being said, so you're not zoning out as much. So and that has always worked for me. And so basically for me on Audible, that would be about like 1.5. On Storytel and apps like that, it used to be almost up to 2.5. But on Audible, yeah, I needed 1.5 for sure for
I
me.
also have a question. So, how do you pick? Because I think I really face the choice paradox even with reading and
Yeah.
with consuming any book.
Yeah.
Because I think there's just so much out there and so
Yeah.
much good stuff
Yeah.
also, right? So how do you pick what you want to read?
I honestly, on principle, I will always pick intuitively, because I feel like if a certain subject is tugging at you, you will find the book that you need to read at exactly the right
I have
moment.
this theory that the right
Yeah.
books find you at the right time. And I have
Yes.
a very interesting story here. There's this one book that I'm reading currently. It's called The Forest of Enchantments. I think a lot of people would know about
Yeah.
this book. It's quite popular. And I've been meaning to read this book for years. It's been years that it's on my list. I read the other book by the same author, Chitra Banerjee Divakurni, called The Palace of Illusions, which is the story of Draupadi. And Draupadi, because she has 5 husbands and, she's in this girl energy, right? Trying to pick the right husband or whatever. It's basically the retelling of Mahabharata from Draupadi's point of view. And Draupadi is in her princess energy of, really picking the right suitor or just wanting to be with multiple men for multiple reasons, at least. I mean, that's how I see it. I read that book maybe like in my early 20s, and then I was meaning to read The Forest of Enchantments for the longest time. But for some reason, I was just not able to pick that book up. Even if I would see it somewhere, I would not pick it up. Something in me was stopping me from picking that book up. But only a couple of months ago, I finally found some inspiration within me to pick that book up. And I think right now I'm in that exact space where I
You needed to
can,
consume that information.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really in that space where I need to consume this book, and I think I'm ready for this book. I am ready to take the lesson or take the inspiration that this book is going to give me, because Forest of Enchantments is essentially the retelling of Ramayana from Sita's point of view. And Sita is in her queen energy. She's not in her princess energy. She's not choosing multiple suitors. She is sticking by one man no matter how hard things are, the vanvas and the whole staying in the forest and basically sacrificing so much for the sake of love, for the sake of one man. And I think that's really what marriage is. So
Well, beautifully said.
I think the right book just finds you at the right time.
Yeah, and I would also like to highlight here, right, what really comes through your story here is that I feel like often people underplay how much fiction is also imparting in knowledge. Because people have started to feel like, fiction is like, ये क्यों तुम कहानियां पढ़ रहे हो? Why are you wasting time reading stories as an adult? Like it's for children and it's just fantasy. The
Yeah.
best of it is fantasy. But I don't think that's true at all. Like I feel like the stories that writers weave, I mean, absolutely dissolving our stake in this conversation, of course. But I feel like I feel fiction actually ends up teaching you a lot more in a much softer way, where non-fiction will kind of give you like rules, fiction will give you perspective. And I feel like that's why I've always enjoyed reading fiction a lot more. I've always enjoyed drawing from fiction a lot more because you kind of get to make that story your own, and
Yeah.
it's just a very different journey.
I think the difference between fiction and non-fiction and taking lessons from each of them essentially comes down to one difference. Non-fiction really tells you what to do
Yeah.
and expects you to do it, and you
Yeah.
hate being told
Told
what
what
to
to do.
do. And I think you hate being told what to do, so you never do it. But fiction really changes something within you by telling you a story, by telling you the impact of what doing something will really
Lead to.
have.
Yeah.
And I think that's why fiction, the lessons from fiction or the learning from fiction is so much more subtle and nuanced,
Yes.
and also very, very long lasting and more actionable.
Yeah.
You're more inspired to do the thing that you've learned from fiction.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't tell you what to
Because
do.
it shows you. It
It
doesn't
shows
tell you.
you.
It's show not tell.
Correct. Fiction is show not tell.
Yeah, which is
Exactly.
again, honestly, when I
It
was
leads by example.
it leads by example. And when I was writing my debut novel, I mean, one of the things that was a really big challenge and something that my editor, who was also my book coach, she was really coaching me with was this show not tell, which was so difficult as a writer,
Very
you know.
difficult.
But that's something that fiction embodies. Like it just naturally is an embodiment of show not tell, and that's how it kind of ends up being the greatest learning that you have from content that you consume.
Yeah.
And yeah, which is why I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I think we can probably end this episode with the one last final question that I have for you, Niharika. What are some of your top favorite fiction and non-fiction books, or what are you currently reading?
Very underprepared for this question. But I will always, no matter what age I'm asked this question at, I will always say that Harry Potter is one of the best things one can read, no matter what your age. I'm actually hoping to kind of go back into those books again now because it's been a really long time. I met this child the other day and she was new to Harry Potter and obsessed with it, and she was asking me questions, and I realized that my memory is getting rusty and I feel like it's time to get back into those books. So, Harry Potter for sure. I'm actually reading this extremely unusual novel. Well, it's not, I mean, it's not a fiction novel. It's a collection of short stories by Ted Chiang, and it's called Exhalation. It's
Okay.
brilliant
What is it
short
about?
stories.
I've not heard about it. How
It's
come?
short stories. They're all different, and a lot of it. Some of them draw from sci-fi. Some of them draw from real life, of course. And it's just a very weird assortment of stories which kind of stay with you for way after you put the book down. You've got to read it. I'll get it for you, but it's on my Kindle. But I'll get you a new copy. So
Love
Exhalation.
that. That's when two writers and readers come together. They
Yeah.
just gift each other books.
I know. But one of the stories that also I feel like has had a haunting impact on me was The Last Leaf by O. Henry, which was a short story.
The
Have you read
film Lutera
Yes.
is based on Last Leaf
Yes.
by O. Henry.
Yes.
Yes. It's so beautiful. The ending, it destroys you.
The ending destroys you. And O. Henry was kind of known for a slow burn. So while you're reading the book, you really don't know where this is going, and it feels like living everyday life where everything is just so mundane until it isn't.
Yeah.
And he's known for his like unexpected endings. So yeah, I mean O. Henry of course has been. What about you? I would love to know.
So I think Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami has to be one of those books that I think has made me feel an emotion that I can't put a pin to. It's something like whenever I pick that book up, I don't really reread it a lot, but I think I just remember that it made me feel something that I've never felt before. And I
I
think,
haven't read this book.
yeah, you must read
Okay.
it. And I think I'm always on the lookout for books that make me feel something so profound that I'm not able to feel it in any other way. And I think that's why I've kind of grown out of very basic rom-coms or, standard fiction books,
Yeah.
which are, I'm not going to say predictable, but you know how you're going to feel. You're going to ship the characters. You're going to feel very strongly for the leading lady or the leading guy. And then, it's going to be like worldly and it's going to be a set of worldly things and attachments and drama and stuff like that. I think I've kind of grown out of that. And I really look for fiction and stories that have a deep, profound impact. Could be around human nature. It could be around human relationships. It could be about longing for love in this world or for like an otherworldly love. I think what I really seek is probably an element of spirituality in fiction lately. Which brings me to again one of my most favorite books. I think I really enjoy Sufi mysticism. So Elif Shafak, 40 Rules
40
of
Rules of
Love.
Love.
I think that is one book I really enjoy. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran is
That, of
again
course, is
something.
just.
I remember reading it on a plane, and I just remember I'm like 10,000 miles above the world, and there's this one sentence in that book that hit me. That sentence was, "For even as love crowns you, so shall it crucify you." And I think there are certain things that you take away from a book.
Yeah.
I think I'll never be able to forget that sentence till the day I die, because I think that's one of the strongest learnings on love. Yeah, those will be some of my most favorite books. Another one of my most favorite authors is Alandi Botton. We spoke about him in our previous episode. I think Essays in Love is one of those books that is just so sharp, so hitting, so cruel, but so comforting. And I think those elements are so rare to find, right? So that has to be one of the best books too. But yeah, on that note, I would love for our readers to tell us what are the books that they're reading and what are the books they want us to read. If there are any books that you guys want us to maybe review, talk about in the next episodes, we'd love to do that. Until then, this is Simran.
I'm Niharika.
And
We're signing off from Girls Who Think, the podcast.
podcast.